Good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher King, and the following is my older adult oral video presentation for SW501. Here we go. Okay. As you can see, I chose stage 8, older adult, old age, or as I've come to label it, advanced age. I had to choose a way to reference old age without blatantly referring to it as such for fear of offending my interviewee. Advanced age just sounds more formal and polite to me versus just saying someone is old. I wanted to avoid that. As my slide indicates, stage 8 is the final developmental stage in Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. As such, the crisis associated with the stage involves reflection on one's life, including failures as well as successes. According to Erikson, this stage is reached at age 65 and beyond, but as you'll see, I'm highlighting a couple of events, significant events, which happened a little prior to that particular age, and I'll explain why once we get there. But according to Joan Erikson, Erik Erikson's wife and professional collaborator, advancing in age is accompanied by the loss of three integral systems from which our sense of sustained existence itself is derived. So, quote, soma, the pervasive weakening of tonic interplay in connecting tissues, blood distributing vessels, and the muscle system. In the psyche, the gradual loss of mnemonic coherence in experience, past and present. And in the ethos, the threat of a sudden and nearly total loss of responsible function and generative interplay. What is demanded here could be simply called integrality, a tendency to keep things together, and indeed we must acknowledge in old age a retrospective mythologizing that can amount to a pseudo-integration as a defense against lurking despair. End quote. Advanced age involves the physical weakening of links to one's past as we experience, quote, autonomy weakened, initiative lost, intimacy missed, generativity neglected, not to speak of identity potentials bypassed or indeed an all too limiting identity lived, end quote. So that quote sort of went along all of the stages prior to the older adult or advanced age stage, and it really takes into account the things that we go back and think of, all of the opportunities that we sort of took for granted as we progress through life, and things that we miss in old age. So just once more, that's autonomy weakened, initiative lost, intimacy missed, generativity neglected, not to speak of identity potentials bypassed, or indeed an all too limiting identity lived, end quote. I thought that was an interesting quote from Joan Erikson, who is Erik Erikson's wife. As older adults, we are primed for reflection due to what we perceive as the looming threat of death. Before it ends, we look back and attempt to make sense of it all, and in doing so are confronted with our final crisis. However, before we get to that, I would like to introduce my interviewee. So, my interviewee is a lady who I will refer to throughout my presentation as MW. She is a 78-year-old African American female who has lived in Jacksonville, Florida for her entire life, and the following are just some of the significant experiences she faces throughout advanced age, but also some experiences she often reflects on as they were extremely impactful to the development of who she is today. MW has endured multiple bouts of cancer. Beginning at age 50, MW developed colon cancer, which was treated into remission. Following that, at ages 57 and 59, she developed and had a reoccurrence of breast cancer, respectively. Her husband, mother, brother, and sister all passed away in this developmental stage. MW was the one to discover her sister as well as her husband's bodies. Those events and the loss of those close family members were deeply impactful. In review of reflecting on past significant events, a study comes to mind associated with whether or not depressive symptoms and other stressors limiting a sense of well-being in old age could be warded against by cultivating a strong sense of coherence, which Anton Aronofsky believed could help to bolster a resilience against stressful and depressive factors. Sense of coherence involves being able to successfully manage one's life through stressful events, being able to make sense of things that do not through analysis, and deriving meaning from significant and even life-changing events. This theory was actually tested by Wiseman et al. In a study conducted in 2013. The authors of the study hypothesized elderly individuals with a strong sense of coherence would have a higher sense of well-being due to a greater ability to integrate past life experiences and see them as meaningful. The results of the study showed the author's hypothesis was not disproved, and it was found in that higher levels of higher levels of life satisfaction were positively correlated with a strong sense of coherence and ego integrity, and negatively correlated with depressive symptoms. Because she is 78, MW has lived through an extremely important time in American history, culturally and socially speaking, meaning the 20th century. I thought these events are important to also note because MW often reflects on living through these times. I believe living and thriving through such difficult times, coming from the circumstances from which MW came, specifically for an African American woman in the southern United States, led to the development of MW's ability to maintain an excellent sense of coherence throughout advanced age. Okay, so as you can see here, the reflecting on past significant events that I listed were MW was a teacher in Jacksonville, Florida for 47 years, beginning in the 1950s. So as you can imagine, as a result, MW worked through the integration of the public schools, basically. She worked through the time in which, prior to the integration, there were separate schools, segregation, schools for black children, as well as separate schools for white children. After the Brown versus Board of Education decision, schools began to be integrated, and MW experienced that firsthand as she was a school teacher during that time. She described some of the experiences with me, and they were very impactful to her, so I did want to list that here. MW was forced to resign from one of the schools she taught at due to environmental contamination and its effect on its employees. So that was actually something which her doctor, co-workers, and then she even proposed to herself as a potential cause for her cancers. And if it weren't for the high prevalence of cancer in her family in general, her brother, father, and mother all passed away from cancer eventually, then she would have looked farther into it. And then by the time she really started to put two and two together, it was too late to take action against the responsible company, but that remained a significant event in her life. And then last but not least, what I also listed was MW often reflects on her childhood in which she was raised by two sets of aunts and uncles, meaning one set of aunts and uncles for a time until she was about 10 years old. And then after that, she was raised until she went off to college at age 19 by another aunt and uncle. And then due to the fact that her parents were not, this was all due to the fact that her parents were not able to maintain a stable household for her and her siblings. Okay. All right. And then this side, I am listing and going over some of the challenges and accomplishments experienced by MW during the stage of advanced age. So the first challenges: independence. MW is 78 years old, meaning maintaining independence is not something which should be taken for granted, which is why I also listed this as an accomplishment to the right. An older adult must possess an able body, a positive mindset, and a coherent mind to be able to successfully live alone without requiring aid. She owns her own home and car, so she's independent, to say the least. Another challenge that she is and has faced is disease. And given MW's prior medical history, the looming threat of disease is only complicated by her age. And that's all I'll say there. Another challenge is finance. As she is retired and receives assistance from Social Security, MW relies on a fixed income, which is also supplemented by retirement savings. Managing this money is a challenge. I mean, just speaking personally, I can barely manage mine, and I have money coming in from my job. So I can only imagine how much of a challenge it would be for somebody on a fixed income with only retirement savings to supplement that Social Security check. every month, where the bills just don't stop. And then, last but not least, the final challenge, death. Simply put, this becomes less of an abstract eventual and more of a looming threat the more one ages. And so, as we advance in age, death just becomes more real. It becomes more and more of a realistic challenge as the next step, after life is over. After that, the accomplishments sustain independence. So, for reasons previously outlined, I listed sustained independence. It's definitely accomplishment to say that she is independent. She has her own home and car. She lives by herself in the southern United States. As an African American woman who is 78 years old, that's an accomplishment in my eyes. Another listed accomplishment includes relationship maintenance. MW has a series of relationships through church, family, and past affiliations, which she maintains. She attends church every Sunday, a habit which was instilled in her at an early age. And then, last but not least, under accomplishments, I've listed respect. MW is a respected member of her family and community due to accomplishments and expertise as a teacher of music and elementary school, as well as her positive and determined spirit. And while we're on the slide, I just wanted to bring up another work included in my annotated bibliography because I believe it fits well here. It was authored by Joanne Giblin in 2011, and it involved a review of the three quote unquote pillars of successful aging in an effort to teach practicing healthcare professionals how to guide advanced age clients towards successful aging and positive mindsets, which, according to the author, were avoidance of disease or disability is number one. Number two was maximizing high physical and cognitive functioning through physical and mental activity. And then finally, number three was engagement with life. So I wanted to list the study just because I find it interesting that MW has had multiple bouts of cancer and is not able to participate in physically strenuous activities at this point. However, she still maintains an excellent quality of life at the age of 78. MW certainly engages with life through maintaining all of her family and community relationships. She also maintains cognitive function through music and reading. So this is another pillar. However, I believe MW is an example that there are no set or concrete rules on successfully aging, and a determined and positive mindset is paramount and can go a long way in mitigating some other or one of the other three pillars of quote unquote successful aging, which you don't have or cannot cultivate. Okay, and before I get into the paramount crisis of stage 8 advanced age, I just wanted to touch on another study which I thought fit well in this section of my presentation. It was a study conducted by Kausick et al. In 2016, which found that lifestyle factors such as physical activity, nutrition, smoking, and drinking habits may not be as important as social factors such as access to health care, living arrangements, which include the quality of the living arrangements, obviously, sense of safety, transportation, etc., in bestowing a sense of well-being on advanced age populations. So continuing from my last slide, I believe positive social factors are helping to provide MW specifically with the foundation that she needs to be able to live an independent life. Having these things available to her at 78, mind you, affirms choices she has made throughout her life, and as such, she is in a much better position than many advanced age adults. These are things she does not have to worry about, making it easier to look back on her life and find meaning in the choices she has made and the things she's been through because she sees the results and the results are positive, and it's much easier to maintain and cultivate a positive mindset when you're in a positive environment, which allows for that.